Let's get more reaction on this case and the aftermath as well. We go to Orlando, Florida, where we have Hilary Shelton. He's the Senior Vice President of Advocacy for the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. Hilary, thank you so much for joining us. I know that Attorney General Eric Holder is set to address your group tomorrow. What do you want to hear from him, and what do you plan to say to him?
Well, what we're hoping to hear is that the commitment that he's already made, and that, quite frankly, that is that the Justice Department had been monitoring the case from the very beginning, that they're now looking at additional information, not only that was actually included in the trial, but much information that was not. That he recognizes, as we do, that very well, if you listen to even the parts that were part of the trial, clearly George Zimmerman laid out that he was profiling Trayvon Martin, that he saw him, that he continued to talk about him in the they category. They think they can get away with this. They believe that they're free to do anything they want to. He kept putting them in a category of others. Even his lawyer said today that Zimmerman was actually looking for an African American because there had been a report that somehow some African Americans had broken into a couple houses in the area. So he went out looking for an African American and saw this one and decided that he's the one that they were looking for, even though, as all the record shows, Trayvon Martin was guilty of absolutely nothing. He'd gone to the corner market, a 7-Eleven, he picked up some candy and something to drink, and he was on his way back to his father's fiance's house when he was attacked by Zimmerman. Zimmerman said all along that he had stalked him, and that indeed he confronted him, he assaulted him, and as things turned out, as they're saying, Trayvon Martin started getting the better of him, and that's when he decided to pull out the gun and shoot him. The sadness of what happened in Florida is that under Florida law, all they had to determine is that George Zimmerman felt that his life was now in jeopardy and was able to use that gun to shoot him, even though every indication is that he started. It is our hope that we will hear our Attorney General recognize all those issues and reiterate the commitment of the Justice Department to pursue this case and bring federal charges against George Zimmerman.
Mr. Shelton, we work in a building where there's a law firm, and I ended up on an elevator with a young attorney, a man of color, and I asked him about his reaction. He said, personally, I'm very unhappy with it, but he said, you know, I'm an attorney, and we have to respect the law, we have to respect the jury, and he said it all comes down to the evidence and the strength of the case. And really, if you look at this case, there seems to be two cases, one that was tried in court, the other the court of public opinion, and two separate verdicts, if you will. Do you feel strongly that if there's a civil case that this is going to go in the direction you want it to, or do you still stand to be disappointed again?
Well, when we talk about in these cases, we're really talking about two issues here. Don't forget, George Zimmerman was actually tried in state court in Florida. Florida state law around self-defense is one that in many ways is influenced by Stand Your Ground, even though they'll tell you they did not invoke Stand Your Ground. But Florida's self-defense laws are different than other states. But in this case, we're not even talking about a civil case yet. We're talking about federal civil rights and criminal justice laws being brought against them. Federal law is different than state law. There's a different standard of proof, and all of that will be brought to bear here. The person you talk to is accurate if you only limit it to the state. He's right. Under Florida state law that's quite flawed and quite dangerous, quite frankly, for many Floridians. I think Floridians need to understand just how at jeopardy they are because of that standard of proof that's utilized in self-defense laws. But very well, as we talk about what we want Eric Holder to do, we're now talking about utilizing federal laws, federal civil rights and federal criminal laws, which would include addressing the issue as a racial profiling concern, which everyone would tell you is something that was not brought up in state court at all. So different standards, different issues, different evidence.
There was a release sent out to news agencies from the Justice Department that said the Department of Justice's criminal section of the Civil Rights Division, as well as state officials in Florida, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, continue to evaluate the evidence generated during the federal investigation, as well as the evidence and testimony from the state trial. Experienced federal prosecutors will determine whether the evidence reveals a prosecutable violation. That doesn't sound like a strong statement like, yes, we're going to go ahead. It seems evidence, evidence, evidence. Are you afraid they may not pursue this?
Well, I think what we're seeing is they are in the process of pursuit. It is our hope that that pursuit actually provides the kind of information we need, the kind of evidence that's going to be necessary to bring that federal case. I mean, very well, I can see why people are concerned, but you cannot judge the case that would come from the federal court in the same way you would in the state court. There was some evidence you probably heard that was inadmissible in state court. Some of that will not be inadmissible. That is, it will be admissible in federal court. And then you also mentioned a civil suit. A civil suit has a different standard of proof as well than either a federal criminal case or a state criminal case. So you have a couple options going on here. It is our hope to do that thorough assessment that will be done by the Justice Department, by that Civil Rights Division and Criminal Justice Section, that will very well find out that we can bring charges against Mr. Zimmerman, and he'll find himself back in court again.
Hilary Shelton, thank you so much for joining us from Orlando. Certainly appreciate it.
It's an honor being with you.